To tell my story, I have to start far in the past. If I could, I'd have to go back much farther yet, to the very earliest years of my childhood, and even beyond them to my distant origins. When authors write novels, they usually act as if they were God and could completely survey and comprehend some person's history and present as if it were God telling it to himself, totally unveiled in its essence at all points. I can't, any more than those authors can. But my story is more important to me than any author's is to him, because it's my own. The story of a human being, not an invented potential, ideal, or otherwise non-existent person, but a real, unique, living one. To be sure, people today have less an idea than ever before what a really living person is. In fact, human beings, each one of whom is priceless, unique, an experiment of nature, are being shot to death in carloads. If we weren't something more than unique individuals, if we could really be totally dispatched from the world by a bullet, it would no longer make sense to tell stories. But each person is not only himself. He is also the unique, very special point, important and noteworthy in every instance, where the phenomena of the world meet once only and never again in the same way. And so every person's story is important, eternal, divine. And so every person, to the extent that he lives and fulfills nature's will, is wondrous and deserving of full attention. In each of us, a spirit has become form. In each of us, the created being suffers. In each of us, a Redeemer is crucified. Not many people nowadays know what a man is. Many feel it and therefore die more easily, just as I shall die more easily when I have finished writing this story. I have no right to call myself one who knows. I was one who seeks, and still am, but I no longer seek in the stars or in books. I am beginning to hear the teachings of my blood pulsing within me. My story isn't pleasant. It's not sweet and harmonious like the invented stories. It tastes of folly and bewilderment, of madness and dream. Like the life of all people who no longer want to lie to themselves. Every person's life is a journey towards himself. The attempt at a journey, imitation of a path. No person has ever been completely himself, but each one strives to become so gropingly, others more lucidly, according to his abilities. Each one carries with him, to end all traces of his birth, the slime and eggshells of the primordial world. Many a one never becomes a human being, but still remains a frog that is important. Many a one is a human being above all fish below. But each one is a gamble of nature, a hopeful attempt at forming a human being. We all have a common origin in our mothers. We all come from the same abyss. Each of us, a trial throw of dice from the depths, strives towards his own goal. We can understand one another, but each of us can only interpret himself.
Chapter 1. 2 Worlds. I begin my story with an experience from the time I was 10 years old and attending the grammar school in our small town. Many memories are wafted to me, touching me inwardly with melancholy and with pleasurable thrills. Narrow dark streets and bright houses and steeples, the chiming of clocks in people's faces, rooms filled with hominess and warm comfort, rooms filled with mystery and profound fear of ghosts. There's a smell of cozy confinement, of rabbits and servant girls, of home remedies and dried fruits. 2 worlds coincided there, day and night, issued from 2 poles. One world was my father's house, but it was even more restricted than that. It actually comprised only my parents. For the most part, this world was very familiar to me. It meant mother and father, love and severity, exemplary manners and school. This was a world of warm glow, clarity, and cleanliness. Gentle, friendly speech, washed hands, clean clothes, and proper behavior were at home here. Here the morning chorale was sung. Here Christmas was celebrated. In this world, there were straight lines and paths leading to the future. There was duty and guilt, a troubled conscience and confessions, forgiveness and good resolutions, love and respect, Bible sayings and wisdom. This was the world to adhere to if one's life was to be bright, pure, lovely, and well-ordered.
On the other hand, the other world began right in our own house. It was altogether different, smelled different, spoke differently, made different promises and demands. In this second world, there were maids and journeymen, ghost stories and scandalous rumors. There was a motley flow of uncanny, tempting, frightening, puzzling things like slaughterhouses and jails, drunks and bickering women, cows giving birth, horses collapsing, stories of burglaries, killings, and suicides. All these beautiful and scary, wild and cruel things existed all around, in the next street, in the next house. Policemen and vagrants ran around, drunks beat their wives, clusters of young girls poured from the factories in the evening. Old women could cast a spell on you to make you sick. Bandits lived in the woods, and arsonists were caught by the constabulary. This second, violent world gushed out fragrantly everywhere, except in our rooms where Mother and Father were. And that was very good. It was wonderful that here among us was peace, order, and repose, duty and a clear conscience, forgiveness and love. And wonderful that all the rest existed, all those noisy, glaring, somber, and violent things which nevertheless could be escaped with a single bound towards one's mother. And the strangest thing of all was how the two worlds bordered each other, how close together they were. For example, when our maid Lena sat by the parlor door at our evening prayers and joined in the hymn with her bright voice, her scrubbed hands flat on her smoothed-down apron, she belonged totally with Father and Mother, with us, with brightness and with correctness. Immediately afterward, in the kitchen or woodshed, when she told me the story of a headless gnome, or wrangled with the female neighbors in the butcher shop, she was someone else. She belonged to the other world. She was enveloped in mystery. And so it was with everything, especially myself. Naturally, I belonged to the bright and correct world. I was my parents' child. But whenever I turned my eyes and ears, the other world was there, and I lived in it too, even though it was often unfamiliar and uncanny to me, even though I regularly got pangs of conscience and anxiety from it. In fact, at times I preferred to live in the forbidden world, and frequently my return to the bright realm, no matter how necessary and good it might be, was almost like a return to someplace less beautiful, more boring and dreary. At times, I knew my goal in life was to become like my father or mother, just as bright and pure, superior and well-ordered as they. But that was a long road to travel. Before you got there, you had to attend schools and study, take tests and exams, and the road constantly led you alongside the other, darker world, and right through it, so that it was quite possible to get stuck there and go under. There were stories of prodigal sons to whom that had happened. I had read them excitedly. The return home to their fathers and the good life was always so satisfying and splendid. I realized keenly that that was the only proper, good, and desirable outcome. But the part of the story that took place among the wicked and the lost was by far more appealing, and, if one were free to state and admit it, it was sometimes actually a downright shame that the prodigal repented and was found again. But one did not say that, and didn't even think it. The idea was merely somehow present as a premonition or possibility deep down in your mind. When I visualized the devil, I could quite easily imagine him down in the street, disguised or clearly identifiable, or else at the fair or in a tavern, but never in our house. My sisters also belonged to the bright world. It often seemed to me that their nature was closer to our mothers and fathers. They were better, more well-behaved, faultless compared to me. They had shortcomings. They could be naughty, but as I saw it, that wasn't very serious. It wasn't as it was with me. In my case, contact with evil was so burdensome and torturing, the dark world was much nearer at hand. Like my parents, my sisters were people to be protected and honored. After any fight with them, my own conscience declared me the one to be in the wrong, the instigator, the one to ask for forgiveness. For by insulting my sisters, I was insulting my parents, the good and imposing faction. There were secrets I could much sooner share with the coarsest street boys than with my sisters. On good days, days of brightness and untroubled conscience, it was often delightful to play with my sisters, to be good to them and well behaved, and see myself in a fine and noble aura. That's how it must be to be an angel. That was the highest goal within our ken, and we imagined it was sweet and wonderful to be an angel, enveloped in bright music and fragrance, like Christmas and happiness. Oh, how seldom it was possible to live each such hours and days. Often while playing good, inoffensive, permissible games, I became too excited and violent for my sisters to put up with. This led to arguments and unhappiness, and when anger overcame me at such times, I was a terror, doing and saying things whose vileness I felt deeply and painfully in the very moment I did and said them. Then came vexing, dark hours of regret and contrition, and then the awful moment when I asked to be forgiven. And then once again, a ray of brightness, a silent, grateful sense of undivided happiness that would last hours, or only moments.